We are near. We are at the golden hour from what I see behind you.
Yeah, not
You
bad.
guys are outside of Montreal. It's 9 or 9:30 or something in the evening there. Is it something in that neck of the woods? And yet there's that late light from the north.
Yeah, but
Uh,
it's the peak of the year. It's so dark in winter. So in
yes.
summer, we have a payback at
There you
least.
go. There you go. And I remember living in, I'm going to introduce you in a minute, but I remember living in Seattle, and even Seattle, because it's farther north than where I am now in Santa Barbara, the twilights are so gorgeous and go on until 9:30, 10 o'clock in the evening. I'm a Spokane boy, so I just love the
Okay.
Northwest, and you guys are certainly in that part of the world outside of Montreal, apparently in a charming little village. How do I envy you? Outside of Montreal. I am speaking to the Montreal-based, so-called Montreal-based, at least greater suburban Montreal ethno-musical duo, and I'm using that because I want to ask you that. You put it in your notes. Ethno-musical. What is
Hmm.
that? The duo. Oh, I forgot to ask your pronunciation. So here goes. Beija-Flor. Am I close?
Beija-Flor.
Oh, of course,
Yeah,
it's
it's
Portuguese slash
Portuguese.
Brazilian. The duo Beija Flor, hummingbird. Hello,
Yeah.
Exactly.
in Portuguese. At least I got that one. I'm speaking with Charles Hobson, guitarist, and Marie-Noëlle Choquette, flutist. They have put out on Big Round Records. That's a kind of quasi jazz, maybe even quasi ethno, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Record label Big Round Records CD release 2018. It's called Costas, which I guess in Portuguese is back. Something like back
It
or
means the
return.
coasts.
We took it for coasts.
Oh, okay. So I got the wrong encyclopedia. It seems
Whoop.
like it should be coasts. Okay, let's call it that. It's much easier than trying to figure out what back was in Portuguese. So costas, let's call it in Portuguese coasts. Works for guitar and flute. Did I recover from that nicely? I hope so. Uh, anyway, and get a load, everybody who loves guitar and flute. Get a load of this roster of composers. Manuel da Falla, de Siete Canciones Populares Españolas, Sergio Assad, Summer Garden Suite. We want to talk about that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful suite for flute and guitar. Astor Piazzolla, Oblivion, which I want to talk about because it's a very interesting arrangement. Narciso Saul, Boulevard San Jorge, excuse me. Roddy Elias, Havana Street Parade. Am I in trouble yet with accents?
No,
Here's the
I
hard
think
one.
good.
Celso Machado, several pieces. I don't want to go there. It's too hard in Portuguese. And Sid Rabinovich for Sephardic songs. What a wonderful, exciting mix of music. You do your own little good bits and colorations and little things around this repertoire that makes it so magical. This CD. But first, let's just talk about the duo. Let me try uh, once more to get the pronunciation. Duo Beija,
Beige.
Beija Flor.
Beige.
Beija.
Just look at the
Beija.
color. Beige.
It's because the E and I, so it's really particular in Portuguese. Beija. Beija. It's like going up. Beija.
Beija,
And
Beija.
this is the birds that kisses flower. Beija is a kiss.
Oh,
Kissing flowers. Like
lovely.
bird that kisses the flower to eat.
Uh, well, thank you very much for that. And of course, I hope I'm not alone in coming up to you after a concert and saying, "Oh,
It
yeah,
happens every time. Don't worry, we're used to
okay,
it.
okay." I know. Something I'm going to tell everybody out there. I mean, you met during your graduate studies at Concordia University in Montreal,
Hmm.
Mhm.
not to be confused with Concordia College in the United States. Concordia University in Montreal. You formed duo. Here we go. Beija Flor.
Exactly.
Yeah, good.
Oh, good. Okay, great. In 2010, so it's not been so very long that you've been together as an ensemble, and yet you've already put out two previous albums.
Yep.
That's pretty good. This thing about cranking out CDs, I just love it, of course. Uh, and there's this kind of combination of world and contemporary classical music mix, and we want to. Let's just start there about what is this? What is this? Because it's way past the day when you would talk about crossover music and stuff. I mean, it's all just a glorious mix. Tell me what you play and why this particular repertoire. Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll talk about it because it's born out of the guitar repertoire. So when you're a guitar student, what are you playing mainly? You're playing stuff from Leo Brouwer, Cuban. You're playing Barrios, playing Villalobos. Like everything's got an ethnic, or well, we would say in school, a nationalistic music approach to it. And nowadays it's not such a nice word, nationalism. So we wanted to come up with our own spin, and we came up with this term ethnoclassical instead. But basically, we're just playing nationalistic music, and that's what our focus is. We love Bach, we love contemporary. She did a master's in contemporary music, but we wanted to have our own little niche, and that's what we came up with.
And by the way, you have your own little niche is clearly ravenously popular with the public. So you made the right decision. I have a funny feeling because it's irresistible, the music that you play, really, in terms of an audience, any audience, a sophisticated audience or a not so sophisticated audience. They're going to come away with rhythm and dance and vivacity, all that wonderful sound that is this nationality, if you will, of these kinds of composers, Brazilian composers, Portuguese composers, Spanish composers, and so on. How about, let's see, let's begin with just a little overview of this backstory. When was it that you decided music was going to be your life? I mean, I hear it from everybody, but everybody wants to know. I mean, was it 3? Was it 4? Was it 24? Was it college? Was it elementary school? When and how did you individually, I presume you didn't meet as youth, find your way? How about it, Marie-Noëlle? Would you like to speak first?
Yeah, I think for me it took a long time. Like I've been having private lessons on the recorder starting at 5. And every year, all my life, I had those lessons. But my parents are scientists. My dad's a doctor. My mom was teaching biology. So in my dreams, I really like nature, forest. I was doing summer camps in canoeing. So I wanted to be a geologist. And when I arrived after my high school, here in Quebec, we have, in between university and high school, we have a CEGEP, it's called. So it's like, I don't know how, it's really between high school and university. So it's more specialized than high school, but it's not yet a university degree.
It might be like community colleges in
I think that's
America.
the best.
Yeah, kind of. And so and it's really not expensive, so it's the best place to try out different paths you could go. And so I did one. I started in pure sciences, and finally I was just practicing my flute because
it's so much more fun.
Yeah, and I went to meet a geologist, and he told me I would pass most of my time on a microscope in a room with no windows and looking at my specimens. So like, oh no, that's not what I expected.
And he thought he was going to get you all excited.
Yeah.
He messed up.
He messed up, yeah. And so then I didn't know what to do anymore because I don't think my parents were so happy about me going in art or music or any. It's really not secure financially, or so for them it was way better for me to go in science. So I had to deal with my inner parents in me telling me you cannot go in music. But then I thought the only thing I'm doing and still loving, and since I'm 5, is music. So then I applied for a diploma in music, pre-university diploma, got accepted, and then it was pretty clear for me that that's what I was made to do. Yeah.
Charles, your turn.
My turn. For me, it seems like I always wanted to be in the arts, or at least, in the arts, because I've always been drawing, and I started when I was really little doing drumming. And when I was about 8, my dad bought an electric guitar, and it kind of like blew my world. I wanted to be Jimi Hendrix right away, so I asked him to get me an electric guitar and get me lessons with his teacher, and I kept playing in private like Marie-Noëlle, but at school I was doing percussion. So I was in the school band, I did the jazz band, I did the marching band, I did everything, but it was always percussion. And I decided just like, okay, I want to be maybe a band director or something. So I was going to Indiana University in percussion, and with the idea of being a band director. And as sort of a bit like Marie-Noëlle, I found myself always in my dorm room practicing my guitar and not doing my 4-mallet technique of Bach like I was supposed to.
By the way, speaking of boring, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, I like playing Bach on guitar. So, I don't know. I looked into what the possibilities were. It was either jazz or classical. And I figured, well, it seems like classical would mix both my worlds. Like I have that high school band background. So, and my marching band, we took it really serious. So we did Samuel Barber, we did Bartok, we did. It wasn't just for halftime shows, for the Bands of America, these competitions that are huge, especially in the Midwest. And yeah, just, I don't know, guitar and classical music together just seemed to make perfect sense, and then the rest is history.
And then how did you begin to meld your playing? I mean, you just mentioned Jimi Hendrix as a big influence.
Yeah.
Now, let me just tell you, I'm the old man with the white tie and tailcoat. I remember 30 years ago when I was horrified by people like Jimi Hendrix. I was so fearful for the future of my art, the classics. You know, I'm way past that now. I finally understood that this is the way, this wonderful melding of genius, Jimi Hendrix, all of these styles of music. It's good or it's bad. Doesn't matter what style it is. It's either good or it's bad. Jimi Hendrix, good. By the way, I lived in Seattle. Hello. He was Mr. Hendrix City.
Come on.
Yeah. So okay. So that's your story then. Yeah. What's the business about meeting? How did you stumble into each other? Forgive the expression.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was looking to do my grad studies. I had a teacher from IU, from Indiana University, that he knew I was looking around the schools, and all those, we know schools in the U.S. are expensive, right? So his name's Daniel Bolshoi. He got his first teaching gig at Concordia in Montreal. He's originally from Canada, and he didn't have any students, so he asked me to come study with him. He said, I know it's cold, but you're going to like it up here. The school's really cheap. There's a French culture, and there's lots of pretty girls.
That did it.
Perfect for right?
Okay, so with those high motivations, off you went to the cold north. And
the cold north. Yeah. And she was doing the same program. Maybe talk a bit about your piece.
I was 1 year ahead of him in the program, and I chose, because I was doing my graduate diploma in contemporary music with multidisciplinary kind of shows, putting contemporary dance, video, and I found that super great piece from a Mexican composer for flute and guitar, but it was super hard, and there was not much guitarist in Concordia in the graduate program. So when he arrived, the dean told me, there's a great guitarist, he could probably play that piece. So I had that fax paper with the piece that the guy from Mexico faxed, so it was all rolling around. I had to redo all the lines and all those different effects written down that weren't real notes, and so I arrived to him like, do you want to play that? And so he accepted, and then it was an awesome piece. Actually, it's called really cool. El Pasaje, c'est quoi?
I don't remember the Spanish. It's the passage in the Purple Garden or something.
Purple Garden Passage or something. It's from Vasquez, a really great composer from Mexico. And so we played that, and then we noticed we liked a lot of different types of music, not only classical. So we played a bit of bossa nova, tom jobim, and we had little gigs of ambience music together. And then we just decided to start to play together and push forward more those pieces. And we noticed that this line we were going to was infinite. Like there's so many classical music, but there's culture everywhere. There's always a wind instrument and a guitar or a string instrument in every culture of the world. And so it was really an infinite treasure hunt to find pieces from all over the world, but from composer that inspired himself.
And by the way, you do your own arranging of pieces, especially on this
Yeah.
Costas CD, and it's this unique touch that you bring to everything. And by the way, I now know who's responsible, I think, for the videos. I told you I was going to speak about you, and I'm going to put all this stuff up at performingartsreview.net. We're going to have your page and your videos, and my review eventually when I get there. But the video interview, all that stuff. But I was so taken because you make a video of a performance piece for flute and guitar. Turn on the machine, play. You guys did something very special. This videographer has to be a friend, because I'm thinking of one of the Polo from the Siete Canciones. That video is knock you off your feet. And it's so simple, the imagery and the little hanging birds. I thought maybe from a room in a museum or something. But tell me a little bit about it. Are you aware of the importance of video image in this age? Of course you are, so it's rhetorical.
More and
yeah,
more.
yeah, yeah. I mean, YouTube's the #1 place to listen to music nowadays, right?
Yeah.
And more people, because we have videos in our face constantly, images always going from our phones to our laptops and whatnot. It needs to be a little bit more of if you want to reach younger audiences especially, you have to be a little bit more, I guess, I don't know what the word would be, interactive, or I don't want to say in your face, because that's debasing it a bit, but you have to be more flashy, right? You can't just put up a still image and let your music play. That might work for certain generations or for certain music fans, but if you want to reach new people and make them excited as we are to play these pieces, you got to show them something excited to get them into it, right?
Exactly.
And
right.
I think classical music is in a, I don't know, at crossroad right now, because like a lot of people that go to concert are older, retired or half retired, but to me my parents have listened to a lot of classical music, so it's been in my ears since I'm a really young kid, and I always thought that music was so expressive, so rich, and I think now we need to put the emphasis on it. If there's a rock band with lights in their shows and everything, it makes it an event, and a classical piece is so much richer sometimes, and with some visuals, it makes it even like 6 dimension or something. It makes it puts the emphasis on all that expressivity that if you just listen, it's nowadays it needs to go fast, everything, and it needs to be a bit in your face, or I like stimulate you all the time. And I think classical music is the perfect medium for your ears to put it in your face with like with an image or with lightings or different mediums.
And before I say anything, Charles, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think what she said, I agree with. I mean, if we think back to just Fantasia, right? Fantasia is the first time that we have like music videos for classical music. And I know everyone of our generation, and before, obviously, it's from the mid 1900s. This is something that brought a lot of young kids to listen to classical music. So, I mean, I'm not to say or pretend we're being revolutionary at all, but we're bringing forward a new way of doing things that a lot of people are doing at the same time. So.
Absolutely, and the word I think is be here now. You are here now. We're in the 21st century. We're almost a quarter of the way into the 21st century. But more importantly, hang on. Just got to fix a little something here. More importantly, and I'll give you my own confession. I fought all of this stuff tooth and nail. I bought in 100% when I was younger the idea that you must wear black, because you do not wish to distract from the slightest hemi-demi semi-quaver of the genius of Mozart. It's baloney. It's stuff from the past. It's dumb. It's idiotic, and so on. Oh, go ahead. I'll settle down now.
I agree, because I think sometimes, though, really purist classical musicians are afraid that we're gonna take from the music. But I think you need to be careful with what you put visually, that it needs to enhance the music, not take over the music. The music needs not to be the background music. It needs to be amplified by the image. Because why we like classical music and why is it so expressive, to me it's because it gives me so many images, so many feelings, and if you can put those feelings outside of your head to help people feel those, because as musicians we practice billions of hours the same pieces, but then people come and they listen once, you know. So if you can help them to evoke all those images, I think it's really it's like where the line is dangerous. The image should not take over the music, but the image should enhance the music.
Which will allow me to give you you and others who do it right, a fantastic compliment, which is, of course, intellect is involved. These are intelligent, really intelligent, sensitive, visual decisions that you have made on two. I'm speaking of two videos that I've seen. One is just really rather simple. You're in a bay window. Remember that piece? I forgot what piece was like. But there's something elegant about the whole presentation. I don't know. That's why I wondered. You know, whoever the person is that's behind the camera and sets these things up, that person is a gem. Bring them into the family legally, if possible. But particularly that Canciones, it was so charming and it spoke so elegant. The imagery spoke so beautifully to the sounds that I was hearing. So I just wanted to really compliment you on that. It's very important. And yes, we are in a visual age. I read voluminously for most of my life. I don't do it anymore. You know, I catch a few things on the internet. I try to read. Who has time anymore? And I love literature and all the rest of it. But it's just things are changing. So I salute you on that. I wanted to make sure you were clear that you've got the right idea with these videos, and if and as you can afford to do more, because it's, you know, it doesn't happen out of thin air. Please do, because you both are obviously very thoughtful. How can you describe? I was thinking of. Let's talk about a specific piece in terms of the charming something or others that I hope you'll be able to explain, that you add, the tiny little soupçons of this and little dashes of that in the background, little things that are above and beyond the score for the most part, I believe, though I haven't looked at the scores, but I think so. And how and why and whether you feel any guilt about it. I was thinking of Astor Piazzolla's Oblivion. This arrangement. This was arranged not by you two, but by someone else. Is that correct?
Actually, no, it was arranged by us.
Yeah, but it's like guitar un peu.
Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, that one's mainly our arrangement. We went to Buenos Aires to work with a guitarist, Victor Villadongos. It's a classical guitarist, and Paulina Fin, a tango flutist, to make sure we're doing everything faithfully. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we don't have any guilt, not on those anyway. No.
And tell me a little bit. I mean, what I hear throughout the CD are, you know what I mean, little whispers at the end of a piece, or little sonic sounds, and of course the wonderful various effects that the flute can make. I just wonder how many of those are written in the score, and how many are your own, just kind of little improvisations to make some spice.
I think most of them are made up by us.
Yeah, really. But I think, I think both we have in our studies. For myself, I'll talk for myself. But I know that I've been always, since I'm a kid, appropriating a lot the music. I was improvising a little bit with my recorder or doing, I don't know. And my teachers in university, in my bachelor, she was a bit fighting against that when I started. And then one day she came to me, and she was really severe and conservative. And she came to me, I was playing a Bartók, Suite Paysanne Hongroise Bartók, and she came to me and said, you know, play it like you felt. It's convincing, and it's fine. You do it better that way than if you try, if it's not natural. And after that, in my graduate studies, my teacher was really, really improvising, playing a lot of contemporary music. And he was always telling me, you know, Marie-Noëlle, what's an artist is someone that plays and lives a music. If a composer wants it to be perfectly played like he has in mind, he needs to play it. But if he wants other to play it, he needs to accept that it's not his anymore. I think we should respect, though, their inspiration, but I think it's our role as an interpreter. Like in Baroque times, you know, they were really doing whatever they wanted with the improving so much. All the ornaments were improved, and I think this is something that needs to be more exploited even in schools to help people find their own way of expressing themselves in music. Yeah.
And by the way, that is exactly what's happening. Let me tell you, because I'm reviewing CDs from all over the planet, and I continue to be, my jaw drops, and I keep saying, "Oh, you old man," I'll say, but you old man, because I grew up in a purist, very purist time, the 50s and 60s. And by the way, most of the music recorded in the 40s and 50s and 60s, certainly of the Baroque repertoire, is totally and completely wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Just plain wrong. Okay? So I am so glad that I encounter professional, you know, classical pianists in Europe, Germans, you know, Italians, and they're all of them. They're doing the Gunther Schuller thing. They're improvising freely. They've found this third way, if you will. So I salute you. And I'm thinking also of Satie, the piano music of Satie. And I've recently reviewed a CD by a German pianist. And he freely, no apologies, no excuses, no program notes, nothing. He freely improvises through this Satie, you know, one of the gymnopédies. And it's so much better. So much more interesting.
And I think it's an honor for the composer. For real, I only choose pieces I love. Like, if I don't like it, I don't see why I would play it. Unless, like, I am hired and I have to find a way to like it. But if I choose a piece, it's because I love what the composer did and it resonates in me. So then I let it bloom as it resonates in me. And I think Chuck and I really like to play with Chuck because he's super sensitive player. And I think together we have that, I don't know, we're able to express ourselves through a music that has been composed already.
Yeah, very, very clear and in the videos as well, because you can see you working. You know what I mean? The brain working, the body working, the phrasing working, all of that. Which brings me to this, I always kind of ask, because there you are, you've decided you're going to do your third CD, COSTAS, which we now are clear. It means coast, of course, idiot. Where I got whatever the other thing was.
Maybe it's second definition. Sometimes words have two meanings. It could be really.
We get the benefit of the doubt.
Of course.
Thank you for sparing me a little bit. I'm climbing up from the cliff edge here on that one. But anyway, your CD COSTAS. I forgot what I was going to say. What was it? Oh, this business of you have to make choices. What kind of I always am so curious. You've got I'm imagining a dining room table full of scores, and the two of you do knockdown dragouts and Rochambeau and everything else to figure out what's left over and what's going to be used. How'd you go through the process of putting these wonderful composers together for the CD, Charles?
Well, for this one, our first two CDs, especially the first one, we kind of did like a world tour program. So that one was actually probably the hardest, I'd say, because we wanted to have kind of the four corners of the world represented. The second album's all Eastern European, so that one was a little bit easier because there's less material, honestly, that we were able to find. But on this one, we certainly didn't miss material, that's for sure. Because like I said earlier, the guitar repertoire is just that. But what we did, or what helped us to kind of cut out some of the choices, is that we really want that ethnic sound in what we're playing. We want it to sound like it's been taken from a local culture and written by a composer, and it still sounds like it's traditional. It still has its traditional sound to it. So certain pieces just weren't appropriate, even if they were written by a Brazilian or whoever. So in those terms, it was kind of easier to find what we were going to put on the album.
Yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense. Yeah.
For Portugal, for example, we didn't find anything. We didn't find any fado composer. that was a classical composer that had written something based on fado for flute and guitar anyway. So we just did our own arrangement. Sometimes it's the easy way out, right?
Yeah, so we tried to do a classical arrangement of those fados because we often, when we decide to do a CD or a program, we choose a theme, and that theme was the Latin countries that are coasting on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. So it limited the countries on the Latin. We couldn't do Italy, or we kept it to that, and then we looked at all those folkloric music too. We listened to a lot of folk music, not even classical at all, just to start and get the feel, also to help us interpret the classical inspired music with a little feel of the real roots, traditional. And so yeah, for fados,
and we're looking at this Moorish Jewish tradition of sound, really. This Portugal, Spain, Brazil, of course, and so on. We're talking about, here we go again, Celso Machado, yeah? Dois Faros, and your arrangement. It's so evocative. I mean, this familiar fado rhythm, and also just the sadness. I don't know what, well, that's what I love about the Portuguese. There's something so special about having an empire, the greatest empire on earth, losing it, and somehow surviving and being the happy, wonderful, friendly people that they are still. And yet there's this sad tradition from the 1800s, I think 1830s or something, when fado tradition began. It's just, just breaks my heart, and it makes me want to just hug every Portuguese and or slash Brazilian I see. But the style is so wonderful, and it speaks, it's able, you know, fado is usually sung. I think I can speak somewhat generically there. So, you know, the words, of course, are so meaningful, but when you two play, you speak, obviously. It sounds corny, but it's true. So, in other words, in this case that you've selected, it's just beautiful, mysterious, lovely, embellished, painful, everything is spoken without the voice, without the need for words. So I salute you. And of course, and let's look at a few pieces. Sid Rabinovich, the four Sephardic songs, again, Sephardic Judaism, that whole thing, the Moorish period, the Jews in that part of the world. I'm speaking again of Portugal and Spain. Am I okay so far on this? I mean, it all fits in terms of your programming. Give me a little bit. There are four little songs, if you will. La Rosa, El Rey, the King, La Reina, the Queen. What's the other one?
Alta es la luna.
Yes, alta alta es la luna, high high is the moon. You know what I love about, this is not quite Latin, but you mentioned earlier the purple landscapes. It's that magic realism.
Yeah.
You know, in literature particularly, but I mean, purple mountain. There's a painter here in Santa Barbara from Guatemala or something, and his landscapes of Santa Barbara are purple mountain. You know, the colors you would never imagine, but they're so gorgeous. Tell me a little bit about Sid Rabinovich and this piece. Was it part of your repertoire? Did you have to go hunting for it, or what?
Actually, we kind of hunted for it, and we got lucky. Here in Canada, there's something called the Canadian Music Centre, which commissions pieces or even houses pieces from Canadian composers. And to be honest, a lot of it doesn't fit with our style. A lot of the flute and guitar stuff that's there is extremely contemporary, which is fine. It's its own thing, but it just doesn't fit with what we're trying to do. And after I don't know how long of a search, we found these four Sephardic songs by Sid. And we looked into it, and wow, they fit perfect. It just kind of fell into our lap. We were so lucky.
Yeah.
Because we were looking for something that was a bit different. Because we think Spanish music, we think flamenco, we think fado music, we think bossa nova, but we always forget that there is this tradition of Sephardic Jews in that part of the world, and they're just as much a part of of Spain and Portugal and their history and their culture. So it was perfect. It was like a gift that just fell in our lap. So we were really happy to find these pieces. And Mr. Rabinovich, that's all he does. He's of Jewish faith, and he's a Canadian composer, still alive.
Canadian composer.
And active.
Wonderful.
writes a lot of choral music, but it's always Sephardic or Jewish based.
Hmm.
So we were really, really happy and lucky to find those songs.
Those
And
four?
I don't think they had been recorded in their
Nope, they
entirety
haven't.
either. So he was really happy to hear those. He
He
was
wrote
really,
them in the 80s, I
yeah,
think.
mid
It was
80s.
so long ago. Like, oh my God, I forgot I wrote that. Yeah, that's cool. So
That's
yeah, it's
great.
a
Well, you've done a wonderful service. Well, let's speak a little bit about Sergio Assad. I loved this Summer Garden Suite, arranged for flute in three lovely, lovely movements. You want to kind of just who wants to give me a little overview of this piece so people can get an idea of
well,
what
this
a
piece
lovely
is
piece.
the soundtrack of a Japanese movie because there's so many Japanese people in Sao Paulo in Brazil,
Hmm.
and Sergio Assad with his brother has a duet,
Assad Brothers.
the Assad brothers. Thank you, and they're fantastic guitar
Are
players.
those two guitarists by chance?
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah,
I've
yeah.
heard them play.
they're
It just connected. I heard
fantastic.
them play in Santa Barbara, so whatever. It's been 8 or 9 years ago. Amazing.
But they're amazing.
They're amazing. And so they got commissioned to write the soundtrack of that Japanese movie. And so they wrote the whole soundtrack for two guitars for their duet. And so we heard knew about the soundtrack, and so we bought the part. And I normally it's kind of easy to arrange. I just have to take away some voices and
Yeah.
choose the ones that are more the melodic ones. And so we just arranged that two-part piece that was originally for two guitars, but we arranged it for guitar and flute. And we took the first three movements that are the most famous ones, and they were the ones that fitted more. In the first movement opening, there's a lot of samba groove in it, and then the next one is less ethno-classical. I would say it's more the
It
magical.
seems like a film. Yeah.
And the third one, Farewell, is really melancholic, and it's so famous we had to play it.
And then you have a little Cuban stuff, Havana Street Parade, Roddy Elias. By the way, again, this tradition that crosses the Atlantic, if you will. Yeah, I mean, the older I get, the more I see this sort of ethnic transit of sound and music, and especially that Moorish Jewish tradition of sound on the Iberian Peninsula, and of course exported to the Americas by the Portuguese who conquered and by the way, very unmilitary. That's the other amazing thing about the Portuguese. Their conquests were reasonably civil as conquests go. The Spaniards, had a different idea. Like, let's take everything, right? But anyway, thanks very much for that explanation because it's so beautiful and I guess at this point my next question, I think I've just about exhausted my thoughts here. Let me see what I've forgotten. What have I forgotten? Anything? What do you want to talk about before we move on to what's next?
Well, we can say again we were lucky to have Havana Street Parade. It was written for us by one of our professors from Concordia, and he's a jazz guitarist. Plays on a nylon string guitar. He plays classically as well. He's classically trained as a composer and guitarist, but makes more of his living as a jazz guitarist nowadays. And we thought, hey, it would be great if Roddy could write us a piece based on Cuban jazz a bit, to show maybe a little bit of a different influence, in fact, on the Americas. And we're again lucky
It's so
to have.
evocative. That tin drum sound. What is that? Where does that come from? Somewhere on the guitar?
Yeah, it's my I'm crossing strings, so they make a buzz rather than a straight noise.
What an incredible percussive effect! It sounds exactly like Cuban tin drum.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
He's really a really smart composer.
Yeah, Roddy is such a smart composer. Yeah, all of his pieces, like he played in his recital, one of his pieces, classical, really awesome, beautiful. Like everybody should know about Roddy Elias. He's an amazing composer, I think. I really like what he does. Yeah, he's able to little magic.
And this idea in this piece, Havana Street Parade, I mean, the little I call kind of the spitting air sounds that you make, all those wonderful effects, by the way, Marie-Noëlle, and also, the pushing air through the instrument, all those wonderful, I mean, every flutist knows these things, not particularly special, but it's wonderful in these contexts of sound. using the soundboard as a percussive instrument. Of course, it's so evocative and rhythmic and exciting. Fabulous. So this CD is it's just a beauty, and call it what you like. It's just plain wonderfully entertaining, beautifully executed. I think we talked a little bit off camera about the fact that you recorded it in a church, and it's not like I'm a sound engineer. Okay, I'm just a conductor. I have pretty good ears. I listen. I enjoy, but I can, when you hear things so cleanly and so clearly, in other words, the recording engineer really captured your sound beautifully in that live acoustic of a church without causing any problems. I think it's a triumph of record engineering.
And Marie, she did our second album, and we were more than happy to invite her back to help us out with the third. And yeah, like you said, a lot of churches, especially in this part of the world, there's a lot of huge cathedrals that just eat my sound right away. You don't hear the guitar, you hear the flute 5 seconds after it was played, and just kind of a mishmash of sound, which some people enjoy, I suppose. If you're a singer, it's great, but if you're a guitarist, it's less so. So yeah, we picked a church that wasn't too big, that didn't have stone walls necessarily, and had just enough acoustics that we wouldn't have to add any kind of like digital reverb. We wanted it to have a natural sound, and she was able to place the mics, I think, just about perfectly.
Yeah, we had two mics in front of us. That's it.
So that's it. Nice.
Yeah, just 2 mics.
Yeah, because we did our first album in a studio, and of course the studio is interesting because you hear everything's so dry, but to play together, the sound stops right away. Yeah. So to phrase, we felt a bit trapped in the not transporting sound. So we feel way more comfortable when it's in a concert venue space that sounds like a real concert, so you can actually play freely more than in a really dry studio.
Where there's a reverberant sound, where you have some air and space and ceiling, 40-foot ceilings around that
exactly.
Kind of. Anyway, it's a superbly engineered CD. So far as my ears are concerned, it's just gorgeous. I could hear every detail, beautiful, clean, clear, the intonation, the tricky rhythms. I mean, these meters are very, very tricky and fascinating in this kind of music. It's all a big success. So what's next? Come on. Hey, by the way, what's going on? Do you have a lot of concerts coming up? I met a friend we're both trying to remember the name of, who ran into at a flute convention recently. But what is the life? So you live in a small, little, lovely village outside of Montreal. How does it work? Do you have an agent, or tell me what the life is. What is the life?
Yeah. I don't know. Well, we don't have an agent. We're self-produced.
Yeah.
I like that.
And it's, for a while we were a bit always searching. We were still always searching for anyone to help us out, right?
Yeah.
But we've noticed that we're able to make things work on our own. We play the same concert series as those with agents, and perhaps we're onto something on our own here.
By the way, this is another change that's going on. It's a very, very good thing, and also people having the free will to create something. It may not be very good. I'm not speaking about you guys, but you know what I mean? Just the freedom to create something in this age, in this electronic age, it's a miracle. It's brilliant. People can be creative, more creative even than at any time in the past. So I love it. Well, anyway, I see from your schedule that you managed to produce yourselves pretty well. You seem to be reasonably busy, and audiences must love you. Don't say yes, they love us, of course, but clearly, because you have this energy, you have this youthfulness, you dress in a manner that is comfortable for all of us. If you get my drift, in this new age where people are finally getting over having to dress up to go to a concert, or dress up even to perform in a certain uniform. I mean, it's all crazy.
I would say to further that, the way we dress it can't be too buttoned up, because the music we play isn't buttoned up.
Yeah.
And it would it would come off bizarrely. I find if I was there in a tux, playing salsa, it just
No.
it doesn't work. It seems weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of comes with the territory. The style is what has pushed all of our aesthetics.
And it must draw a young audience. Come on, over time. Come on, you must
Yeah,
have
I
a
mean,
certain young
Yes
audience.
and no. It's certain that we are booked in classical series, so classical series normally attract more older audience,
mm,
but I'm pretty sure that slowly but surely it will renew itself, and we'll Monday and Tuesday we have a residency to work on lights for our Costas concert program, so
mm,
we'll have a hall with programming lights, so we can sell that show in big halls with lights actually enhancing the music, like I was saying earlier.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, next year we'll be busy enough. We'll go probably. We'll try. It's not nothing is certain yet, but we have been invited by one of his former teacher who's in Costa Rica now. So we would go
Oh,
give master classes and concerts in the universities of Costa Rica in fall, and in spring we may
yeah.
go
We don't know
have
if it's the spring, but sometime
if
soon.
sometime soon do a concerto, Piazzolla concerto, accompanied by the Georgia University Guitar Orchestra.
oh,
So this would be a
oh.
great experience. We certainly cross fingers it will work, but it should, it should.
Sounds good. You're busy, innovative. Costas, your CD, works for guitar and flute. Just fabulous. I have just been spending way too much time. Now, this is my excuse. I'm not going to edit this. I don't edit anything because it'll ruin it. People will decide to listen and watch through, or little bits and pieces, doesn't matter. But that thing about any artificiality kind of wrecks the mood. And even that's my excuse anyway. Even in interviews, but in music making and all the rest of it, you don't want to have any artificiality. You want genuine, heartfelt music making conversation, music that makes sense to you, most importantly, that you can convey to an audience. We're talking with the duo, here we go again, Duo Beija-Flor. Uh,
Perfect.
Hummingbird is what that means, in the bird that kisses the flowers, as you described
Yeah.
earlier. It's so delicious. Charles Hobson, guitarist, Marie-Noëlle Choquette, flute, Montreal woodlands based. Oh God, I'd like to see what's around your house. It must be gorgeous there. 2018 big round records CD release. Costas works for guitar and flute. Thanks very much for giving me some time. And look, oh, it's gone dark finally. It's like 10:30
Yeah.
wherever you are. It's
It's
finally
pretty
going
dark
dark.
now.
Okay, many thanks again indeed, and I'll keep in touch, of course, when I get this ready to post that Performing Arts Review down there.
Great,
Right.
thanks to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Glad
Bye.
you like the CD.